Good. Glenn, I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, it's perfect. I can see normal screen. Okay.
Fabulous. Excellent. Thank you. So first of all, I have to say thank you again, Glenn, for organizing this. And it's such a marathon event, an amazing lineup of speakers. And I'm so glad I can finally make it, because face-to-face has always been a challenge. So, hey, there are some positives in times of COVID. And thank you as well to all the teachers for joining us and everyone logging in, and just like I saw in Chris's presentation, for being so active in that chat box as well. So good. So today I want to talk with you a little bit about revisiting our role. And I think Chris made some valid comments there as well about the fact that a lot of the things we have been doing is taking our face-to-face experience to the online classroom. And my question is, does that actually work? Do we actually focus on the right competencies as teachers there? So good. Very quickly, I'm going to show you my email and my details before the session. If you do want to connect and have any questions and we don't get time for that, feel free to contact me here or connect online as well. And as Glenn already said, I'm speaking to you from Dubai, and I don't know what you know about Dubai, but at the moment, everyone is working from home. So there have been some internet issues. They're often not very long, but if the internet falls over, please do not panic. Have a little stretch, get up, be patient, and I'll be back, inshallah, as they say here in the Middle East. So good. I think that was about it. And let me start talking a little bit about the content of my session. Well, I'm just going to open my chat box so I can see what you're saying as well. Beautiful. Good. So I want to start with a quick connector. Now, I think as teachers, because this is really a little bit looking at our role as teachers in the classroom, in the online classroom. When we plan lessons, we probably usually write at the top of our lesson plan sheet, warmer or lead in. But since teaching online, I've really noticed that is really nice, but it's actually really about connecting to my students. So now I try to think about an activity that really sort of gives us a little bit of time to talk about how are you doing, how are you feeling, what has happened to you over the weekend. So I like to start with a little connector activity, and I thought it might be interesting for you to find out a little bit about my 2020 so far. Being based in the Middle East, I think everything was quite all right here initially. So we started face-to-face classes after Christmas, all good. And let's say mid-March, the situation became a little bit more precarious, like what's going on with this COVID? Let's move the school holidays to the end of March, move them away from April. And after the April holidays, it's okay. After 2 weeks, we will go back to face-to-face. But of course, we all know Mr. COVID came along, here to stay at the moment, it seems. So a lot of our schools went back in April to online teaching. We had, of course, the summer holidays as well. And as you can see in our context here, early childhood, for example, still teaching from home. Primary and secondary are in the classroom, but in a hybrid format, which means half of the kids are at school and the other half is at home. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we swap over. And secondary, similar story. All university courses are mostly still provided online. So it's a bit of a mixed bag in my context, but very different to what I'm used to. So I'm actually really curious about you, because I see there's people from Minsk, there's people from Malta, Italy, all different places. What about you? How are you currently teaching? Are you still lucky enough to have face-to-face classes? Are you 100% online? That could be synchronous or asynchronous. It's a bit of a mixture. Or are you teaching in a more blended environment, which means some days you're at school, some days you're at home, online? Or is it more like hybrid, what we are experiencing in Dubai, with 10 of the kids on Skype or Zoom and 10 of the kids in the classroom? Or maybe you are just using worksheets, because that also is an option. And some of our schools in the region had to do that because of problems with the internet. Interesting. Blended, 100% online, fully online, mixture. Oh, wow. So blended. Oh, that's so nice that some of you have still a little bit of face-to-face. Tiziana as well, you started face-to-face and back to online now. Yeah. Olga as well, mixture. I think for all of us, it doesn't really matter how we are teaching at the moment. It's been a huge journey full of challenges and changes. And I think for all of us, again, it doesn't really matter because we might not be sure yet what's going to happen next month, let alone after Christmas. Yeah, so there are lots of concerns, lots of surprises, and lots of things we're just not sure about. But I do think it's realistic to say that there will be more online teaching, because even the few of you that said we started face-to-face, we've now gone back to online teaching. I think that is the case in many places, with winter setting in and that colder weather and that second wave, or whatever you want to call it, that COVID sort of spiking up again. I actually think in a way this online teaching has been an amazing learning curve for me as a teacher, as a trainer, but also as a learner. It's sort of the third revolution in education, I think. We haven't had many. In the 18th century, we had the printing press. Then I think in the 19th century, they developed the blackboard, and now it is online teaching. So maybe it's well overdue that there was some change for us. However, I think one of the challenges is that we weren't trained for online teaching. And as Chris Rowland said, rightly so before, we're often trying to take maybe techniques, activities, and methods that we have done in the classroom, face-to-face, onto the online context, and that doesn't always work, like quizzes, for example, as he pointed out, or testing. Yeah, and there's some lovely research as well from Sophie Mafridi. The results you see here, those numbers, they're from April 2020. So indeed, Ida, it might well be different, because in a way, I think we're all a little bit more prepared now, right, for that online teaching. We had to sort of go in overnight, emergency remote teaching, trying to find our feet while we're actually in flight. And I think a lot of us have developed skills to cope with it. Doesn't always mean that we're not concerned or we're not worried about how we're teaching and how our students are learning. Yeah. So I want to move you on and find out a little bit more about you, because I certainly have my own concerns about teaching. So I'd like to explore your context. In a minute, we're going to use the chat box again, but this time in a different way. And now in your class, if you only have 12 students or 18 or something, you can actually easily use microphone if you want to. You could use Mentimeter, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that fabulous tool as well to get your students engaged. But there's so many of you, I'm just going to keep it to the chat box in a slightly different way. I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, and I'd like you to write your answer in the chat box. But you need to do one more thing, and for that you need to look carefully at the chat box now, because you need to find the name of the next person, or another person in our case, who is going to answer. So for example, I answer the question and I might think, oh, time management. I look at the chat box and oops, Glenn. So I type in time management, Glenn, and Glenn will go, oh, my answer is yes, speaking lessons, right, Rob. So you have to be very focused on that chat box. As soon as you see your name, yeah, write your answer in the chat box again. So it's a bit like chain writing, and all students are writing at the same time, and they really have to focus. With my teenagers, it really keeps them focused, because we're just trying to see how many ideas we can get and how many times your name comes up. Yeah. So your question, so have a look. First of all, find a name. Maybe you know some people here, maybe not. Let's not all write down Glenn or Rob. But good, select a name. And my question for you is, what is most concerning for you about teaching online? What are your worries? or what are you concerned about? Type it in the chat box, put a name behind it, and off we go. See if we can gather lots of ideas. Ha, Tiziana, there you go, your choice. Julia, here you go. Oh, fabulous. I see lots of names coming past. There's Daria, there's Lotta, there's Daniel. I also see lots of things like internet connections are quite troublesome and worrying for some of you, engaging, motivating. Rapport, beautiful. I'm going to give you another 20 seconds to see what else we get. The level of understanding for separate students, I do agree, it's quite hard to check sometimes if all students understand the concept. Lack of interaction, Alex, maybe you want to try this. It might be an idea to get your students more engaged. The price of a course, a very interesting one, right? Because it's actually as difficult for teachers to teach online as it is in the face-to-face classroom. Reluctant students, good. Last answers, 5, 4, 3. Motivation, lovely. Technology challenges. Oh, I so like that one. You know, too much sitting. I actually bought a stand-up desk because I'm sitting behind my desk, I don't know what, 10 hours a day for marking, for my lessons, for my feedback, for everything. Very much agree. Latecomers is a challenge. Well, maybe the connector could give you an idea there as well, that you actually do the connecting activity, which is not related to the lesson, but to sort of building that community. Lovely. I'm going to stop you there. I think some of these things are quite similar to what I have heard other teachers say really concerns them in the online classroom. Workload you didn't mention, but I think maybe that relates a little bit to that sitting. There's a lot of marking, there's a lot of screen time, there's a lot of preparation, calling parents, all these things. Either the emotional exchange with your students and individual support, yes. And I think a lot of you were talking about technology and keeping your students engaged online, right? Good. For me, oh, and coffee, yeah. Finding my time to get that coffee, Rob, that's my challenge, I think. Good. I think one of the things that I've really, as a teacher trainer as well, I've really worried about is the learning that I'm trying to sort of trigger, is that actually taking place? Am I ensuring that my students are learning with the activities I use? Because as I said before, the activities, the techniques, the methods or the approaches, all these things we've learned on CELTA, Delta, or any other teacher training courses, they've often been developed in the face-to-face classroom. Does it really work that we just sort of convey that method and put it in the online environment? Or do we actually need to transform what we do? So there's lots of different things that I've been wondering about as a teacher trainer. When I train teachers, do I actually have to look at different competencies? I know we've got skills and systems and clarifying, checking meaning, but is there anything else that I'm missing? Yeah. So my question for you, and you can use the chat box for this one, is to have a think about what competencies do you think online teachers need to make that learning happen in that online classroom? Of course, knowledge of English, content or subject knowledge. What other things do you feel that really benefit you as a teacher in that online classroom? Oh, Lucy, indeed. Organizational skills. You need to be really prepared, right? And I always have my things printed out. My papers are around me, my fluffy toys or whatever I'm doing. It's all easily around me, whiteboards. Time management, I very much like that, John, because I think everything I've been doing online always takes so much longer than I plan. Flexibility, yes. Professional training skills, I think online very much, Agnieszka, even in face-to-face. Patience, Jana, exactly. If I work with my older students, I volunteer in a group with Korean ladies. Technology is such a challenge, like Kata is saying, be a techie. My lovely students are not very skilled. So it can take us about 5 minutes sometimes to get a mic working or to find the chat box. So yeah, you need to be able to sort of deal with that stress. Shiwei, self-care, I think that is really nice. And to be honest, I get my students to turn off their cameras quite a lot when we do writing or reading activities, because looking at yourself, oh, it's just so tiring as well. Work-life balance, very much, Iwona, because I think we're all working from our bedrooms or spare rooms or living room. Yeah. Great. If you write an answer in the chat box, can you make sure you send it to everyone, to panelists and attendees, actually? Exactly, Kate. Thank you. Empathy, another lovely one. Adaptability, yes. So when I look at skills and you cluster them, I think there's a lot that we say as English language teachers, we need that subject knowledge. We need to know what we're teaching. We need that pedagogical knowledge, how we're going to get that across, how we actually make that work. So students start to understand, like ICQs, CCQs. We need knowledge about our learners, right? So we need to know their strengths, their weaknesses, maybe their learning preferences, how they like to work. Do they want my help? Are they happy to figure it out alone before they ask me? Can they actually deal with this insecurity of guided discovery, for example, if you look at teens and adults? Also the motivation and their personalities, who can they work with well? Then, of course, we need to have knowledge about learning, how learning normally happens. Yeah, activating schemata, prior knowledge, and that new knowledge needs to be of about the right level to be able to stick to the knowledge they already have. If it's way too difficult, in your brain, those neurons cannot link. So it's a bit like candy floss. If it doesn't touch, it's not going to stick. And then, of course, we need to know, particularly if you work in a primary or secondary school environment, the curriculum. What are the requirements? What do my students need to know at the end of this term or at the end of the semester? For me in the Middle East, very much cultural knowledge as well. What topics can I talk about? How are we actually working on the national identity so students actually can develop that as well in English? And then I think there's another one we often forget as teachers, self-knowledge. Yeah, how do I come across when I teach? I might say certain things with the right intention, but it might come across in a very different way. So those are lots of different things. And then, of course, technology, and that has sort of taken over, I think, with what we're doing at the moment, because everything we do, we need to know how the tech works. So I don't know if you're familiar with the TPEC model. So TPEC is one of these models developed to sort of guide teachers in using technology, but also guide professional development, and at the moment also the digital pedagogy. So it's very much used to underpin everything we do in the classroom and everything we train teachers on in an online environment. So as you can see, you already mentioned they need that pedagogical knowledge, that content knowledge, that techie knowledge. So those are all really important elements, and what is so beautiful about this model is that they have interlinked, because quite often we have technology, but we might just use it for the sake of it, and that's not what we want. We like activities like Kahoot or Quizlet or all these things, or Mentimeter, but it needs to have a real aim. So what you see here in the middle is really where those three different areas touch, how one can sort of enhance the other. So the TPEC model is really where we think about how can technology help you teach the content in a pedagogically appropriate way. Yeah, so you have to think about age there, you have to think about level there, you have to think about skills or systems. And how can we use technology to actually enhance that learning for our students? So that's where those 3 areas completely match, which is beautiful because they're not separate. We all need to use them to transform the content, to enhance maybe our pedagogy by using technology. And there's lots of different tools that I'm sure you're familiar with, like Padlet, breakout rooms, answer garden, word wall. I'm not going to look at technology too much with you because I'm pretty sure you know lots of that already. But what we really want to look at is how can we use that technology to enhance the students' learning. I think that's the most important. Yeah, so there are 3 different areas and all these touching blocks that actually support and enhance the other area through the use of technology. Now, if you look at these, which one do you feel, which of the competency do you feel is the most important for teachers in the online classroom? Would it be technology? Would it be pedagogy? Would it be a mixture of those? Would it be the content that you teach? Or is there anything else that you feel is most important in the online classroom for you as a teacher? You're saying they're all equally important. Well, I think in the TPEC model, they actually show that they all interlink and have an impact on each other, right? Oh, Iwona, nice one. A balance, Castiana, a balance between all of them. And that actually the TPEC model is sort of trying to promote that. Early on, the time management, and I think like Glenn said as well, you can't have too many dead moments because it feels like an eternity online. Pedagogy, Sandra, I think very much, I think pedagogy is still super important. And for me, technology should be to support it. It should never lead my choices when I teach. However, when you're online and you can't use technology, you can't teach online. So there is a bit of a balance that we need to find there, right? Yes, you need to find that technology knowledge if you don't have it, because otherwise we can't teach. Good, Chiwei and Iwona already mentioned rapport with the students. Now, this is really interesting because when we started training teachers online and helping teachers with this move to the online world, it was all new. And I think over the last couple of months, we've all developed more confidence, maybe a little bit more knowledge. We might have done some courses, maybe Future Learn, maybe the iCold with IH, maybe an online teaching course with Consultants E, for example. So lots of different things we have developed over the last couple of months. And I think by now I can say I'm a lot more confident. When I first caught up with Glenn somewhere in March or something, I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? How does this work? Yeah. So I think I sort of know what I'm doing. But then I've noticed in my classrooms, some of my students are quite happy. They get on and I actually can see evidence of progress, evidence of learning. But then I also have students who sit like this when we're in a breakout room, when they turn their camera on, they just don't look happy, they don't look comfortable. And when I look at their learning, I don't know what's happening. It's like, oh, teacher, I'm just too tired. Teacher, I can't do this. Or they're just not really communicating with any of us. And I don't know if you have noticed this, there's a huge difference. Some students are really thriving in this online environment and other students maybe not so. And this made me question this whole TPEC approach to professional development and to teacher training. Is this actually what it is about? So I started to ask my students to write something for me about their experience with going from the online classroom to the face-to-face classroom. And I'm only going to show you one excerpt, but it was very similar for a lot of my students. Yeah, there's a word missing and there is a spelling mistake. See if you can find it. This is what one of my students wrote. This class is my second home. I'm part of a close-knit group and now there is the digital divide and too many tech issues. What do you think that missing word was for my student who was not so happy? Ida, isn't that interesting? You're saying that some of the kids were depressed and lost. Yeah, it's going in that direction. A gap And now there is a gap, maybe an emptiness. Lucy, a physical distance, yes. And these students are working on their IELTS. They're grade 12, so their language is pretty decent. So he used an amazing word, which actually made me feel really sad as a teacher. Yeah, social isolation. We are so connected in the online world. I mean, it's amazing that I can see Lucy here and Ellen and Rob and Glenn and Andre, but we're also so far away. So this really made me think, like, it's all good and well that we have this lovely model of TPEC that we're trying to use to train teachers and develop ourselves, but maybe we are missing something. And a few of you have actually already hinted in that direction. I think we really need to think about the effective factors when we develop online learning skills and online teaching skills. We really need to, as teachers, develop that competence to be aware of what's going on in our students emotionally. Yeah, we need to we need to develop that social emotional awareness as a teacher. Could be social emotional knowledge, but also the skills that you can connect, that you can build that rapport with your students, that you can actually support them emotionally. And I think this has become even more important in our current context, where some of our students have had really tough times, like in Italy. There was a really hard lockdown. Some countries are going towards a second lockdown. So I would say it's a time of crisis, and a lot of students are experiencing trauma. So you being there as a teacher and having these skills beyond knowing how the technology works, but really being able to connect to your students. Yeah, building rapport, as you already said, is maybe more important than any of these separately. So what I want to look at is how we can actually connect students, make them feel safe, and make them feel included in our classroom. So it's very much creating a supportive learning community. Yeah? And this sometimes we don't take the time for, or maybe it isn't prioritized in the school or in the context we're teaching, but it's super important. I'm just going to let you read the next quote. Irona, indeed, it's all about that human connection, right? Humanizing the digital classroom. Good. And I think if I ask you to think back to maybe an online learning experience, I bet the experiences you remember are the ones that you felt some sort of connection with maybe the tutor or the other participants. And that's the ones that we really feel we actually learn, because there is something happening in our brain that enables that learning. And if you look at science, your brain needs to feel safe before it can learn. Anything that we receive goes through our brain, and it goes to our limbic system first. And that limbic system is the system where we actually feel. Are we happy? Are we safe? Are we okay to be here? If that limbic system is not in the right state of mind and doesn't feel safe, it's not going to be able to transfer the information to your prefrontal cortex, that part where all the thinking happens, because your brain is way too occupied thinking, am I safe? Should I stay? Is this a good thing to do? It hasn't got the brain space for learning. So making sure that your students actually feel safe in that classroom is so important. That is really what we need to think of as teachers first. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any ideas how you can create a supportive learning environment. How can you create a community in your classroom? I'm just going to go back to the chat box because I think that is the easiest. Looking at time, what do you do in your class to create a supportive learning environment? Chloe, nice, lovely. Involving them in setting common goals, because that really means that you're a team. Having a chat. Yeah, no, it's so simple as that, isn't it? Having a chat, taking some time to actually listen to them, to ask them questions, socializing. Yes, coffee time. giving them a chance to really communicate. I think that's a really important one. Group work, peer support, personalization. There's lots of fabulous ideas already in the chat box. Emma, yes, including everyone. That inclusiveness is really important, because when we're in a classroom as a teacher, we can sort of oversee where our little groups are forming, where people are sort of dropping out and being left alone to sit on their own. But we can't do that online. We don't really know who's chatting to who or who's talking to whom after the lessons. We can't read their body language. A mood checker, exactly, Irona, or a connector activity, I often call it, yeah, to ask my students how are they feeling, tell me one exciting thing that happened today, and there's always something. You might think there's nothing. The engine of my car blew up this morning, so that was a bit stressful. So there's always a story, and then we talk about what other things happened as well. Good, yes. Cooperation with parents, Chiwe, I think that is a really important one as well. Good. If you look at research and you look at the building of a supportive learning environment, there's actually 3 pillars. And the first pillar would be building trusting relationships. And I think when we look at language teaching, we often talk about building and maintaining rapport. It's very hard to actually define the word rapport, but in a summary or in a nutshell, you could say it's got to do with positive relationships between the teacher and the students. So there's respect and there is mutual trust. So that's a really important one. When you look again at research, and this is quite old from 1995, there's more recent research in cognitive science. You can actually see that the brain doesn't allow any learning to happen if someone doesn't really feel safe. So building trust, I can't remember who wrote it in the chat box before, but building trust in your classroom is so important. Rapport building skills, really, they are the key to effective learning and teaching. And that is social emotional skills. If you can't build rapport as a teacher, it's going to be very hard to have any learning taking place in your classroom. So I'm just going to show you a few activities that I use. I love my life in pictures. I quite often use this in the first lesson because I think there's different elements, right, to building rapport. It's using names, it's personalization, it's connecting to my students, talking about my life and my feelings. It's also about showing the authentic me as a teacher, being myself, showing myself as a human being. I'm not just a person who marks your IELTS essays. I've got a life. So for example, at times I select 6 images and I might say, okay, can you guess a little bit about my life? What are my hobbies? What do I like? Maybe, what do I not like? Yeah, so here there are 6 pictures for you, and 5 of these pictures are about my life, and they're true, and 1 picture is in there that's not really important in my life. So here I've got a true false. Which picture does not relate to my life? Maybe I don't like flying. Kate, how do you know? I'm vegetarian. Yes, the steak, although in New Zealand it's really popular, right? But yeah, no, I don't eat meat. You can have that, honestly. So this is just nice to tell something about yourself that's not related to teaching. Lovely follow-up. Students can do exactly the same, right? And we get a little bit of an insight into the student behind the name or the student number on your list. Another thing I've been working with my students is personal profiles. We've been using it for ages when we teach special needs children, if you want to phrase it that way, because children and parents can tell me about what they like and don't like in the classroom, but I've adapted it to just sharing a bit about me. Yeah, so I introduce myself, name. Now you can include in PowerPoint as well a recording, and this is really useful if you work with students who've got very difficult names to pronounce, because the most important thing is that you get the names right, so I can listen and practice. In the about me, I've written here a little bit about what I like, and I've also said something about my learning. I don't like reading aloud if I have no preparation time. So particularly students who need different support or maybe more support from you in the classroom, they can actually tell you here. Parents can help you with this. You can make it more kid-friendly, my favorite animal, my favorite color, your favorite hobby. And we're sharing this on a Padlet or in Seesaw or however you want to do it. They get to know something about you, you get to know more about them. The other thing, checking in regularly, just having a quick virtual Zoom hour every Thursday from 6 till 8 for my adult learners. I'm on Zoom. If you want to come, you come. If not, we can have a private chat. We can actually talk about things you might not want to talk about in the classroom. Then also the second pillar of that supportive learning environment is that inclusiveness. So everybody needs to be able to feel part of the gang. Yeah, if you want to be able to feel safe, you need to feel that you actually are part of that group. And the challenge, as most of you might have noticed, it's much more difficult if we are online, because there is no unstructured opportunity to have a chat with the student at the other side of the classroom. Everything is all organized and pre-planned in Zoom, for example. So one activity I use a lot at the beginning of my class is shared and unique, because everybody is different. That doesn't mean that you can't be included. So in breakout rooms, my students in groups of 4 or 3, they talk about a list of things they have in common. Not your hair color, not that you've got 2 eyes, but maybe hobbies, interests, skills. And then we go into list at least 2 things about each person that are completely unique. Maybe you play the guitar, maybe you do yoga, maybe you're super interested in astrology, anything. And then you can either put that on Jamboard and guess which student that relates to for the other teams, or we can present our group on Padlet and have a read and see what there is, followed up by a discussion where I actually want to highlight that it's okay that there are differences. This is so beautiful because it means you can actually build and take the strengths that the others have to develop yourself. And what we have in common, that gives us already comfort, but we can really learn from each other where we are different. Yeah, so shared and unique, a lovely activity with teenagers and adults. With younger learners, you really have to grade it a bit more. Everyone has a voice, very easy for you to set up if you use Zoom or Microsoft Teams. In break, all my students can choose, what are we going to do this break time? Do you want to have a chat? Do you want to listen to a song? We do the poll, most votes, that's what we do for 10 minutes. Yeah, but also if you want to contribute to my lesson, you can actually say, I want to watch this YouTube in class, Anna, because, so they can write some questions, they can give me a reason. Do check it's appropriate, but I find the students find it really nice that all of them get a chance to contribute to my lessons. And of course, when you want to make sure that students are inclusive and communicate, there's all these different tools that you can use if you are teaching online face-to-face or in an asynchronous context. But I'm pretty sure you know all these tools. Good, I'm going to move on so there might be some time for questions. The last pillar that we really need to work on to create that safe environment is that students feel that they belong in our classroom. They need to feel at ease, they need to feel welcomed, and they really need to feel safe because, like I said before, your brain has no space to learn if you're worried about what's the teacher going to say, what are my classmates going to say. So I think, again, by collaborating and sharing maybe some odd things, we actually find out that we're so much more similar than different and that we're all okay. We can be our authentic self. So one of the things I often do with my teens, and they love it, get ready, unplugged, go and run, find me something which you got given but never use. So we come with some random things to the screen. And here you will see that everybody probably has something like this. You can grade your language, find me something you got given but don't like, you would never use. Students indeed love to get up, grab something from the living room, bedroom, and then in breakout rooms, they can talk about it if you want to, or they can record themselves and upload it. You can use Flipgrid, which is also a really nice way to actually make students feel connected, Or Padlet, you can record your voice and show pictures as well in Padlet. So an amazing tool for us to use. Now, the last one, I've just started with this. I used to do it in the face-to-face classroom quite a lot, our passion project. So every 6 weeks, we get some time to present about something we're passionate about. I think my aim here is really to tell my students, it's okay to be you. You're unique and you know something that really amazes us. Be proud of yourself. So for me, my topics often travel because I love it. And then everyone writes questions in the chat box on that topic. I select 5 questions and then I'm going to prepare my mini presentation for 2 minutes, answering 5 of those interesting questions. And then we're going to present it to each other. So there is learning, there's language, content learning, and there's a lot of thinking, oh my God, you know so much about this. So you're also building, again, that mutual respect and the connections and that sense of, yeah, you actually really belong in this group. Oh my God, you're unique, you're fabulous. And I think that's really important. So I'm going to finish off. Yes, TPEC is a beautiful model. But for us teachers, Julia, SpeakPipe is a really nice one as well. Yeah. Fockaroo, the oldest one, Iwona, but my favorite, I think. Good, so for us teachers, it is important to have that knowledge about technology, pedagogy and content. But I really think for us, it's all about humanizing the teaching context we're working in at the moment, making it human, connecting to our students, letting them know we are there for them. Yeah, because they're challenging times, not only for us teachers, but also for students. So make it relational and make sure that you give time to your students to connect together so they can feel part of your community and feel safe in your classroom. Good. I'm going to leave you with this quote, and I hope that there is one thing that you feel, oh, maybe I'm going to take that away from today's session. Even if there's one thing, I'm happy. There's some food for thought that we shouldn't over digitalize our online classes. Good. So I'm going to say, if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or the Q&A. Glenn.
Hello, thank you so much, Anna. Again, an amazing session. Yeah, guys, we've got pretty time for about 1 or 2 more questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat box or in the Q&A feature right now.
I think John had a really valid point that time management is my greatest challenge.
Yeah, I think it's everybody's, to be honest.
Isn't it just?
And, you know, these things can, you know, they go very quickly. You know, an hour, you know, online goes very, very quickly. I don't know, teachers find the same, you know, during their lessons, but I feel online lessons tend to go quicker than face-to-face. I don't know what that is, why that is.
And particularly, I think when you are going to use any of those tools like Mentimeter or Padlet, you have to set it up, change screens.
And yeah, I find it so fiddly, isn't it? I mean, what I'm doing now is incredibly fiddly, like different screens and different buttons, trying to make sure I'm sending messages to the right person, things like this. It can be quite fiddly. Yeah, now we've got some questions. Everybody's just saying thank you. Which is nice. Not any questions, but somebody says they definitely love the project that you mentioned, the passion project. Great idea, so useful to be reminded of the importance of the human connection, especially in 2020. That's a valid point. Very much so.
Thanks, Lucy.
So
I think we often forget that, right? It's also focused on, are we doing a good job? Can we actually switch between screens so there is no silence or black screen? But for our students, they don't really care too much about that. They really care about you being there for them, don't they? And
also they care about the interaction. You know, remember, you know, during lockdown, they're stuck indoors. Right now, kids between, well, under the age of 14 and under here in Poland cannot leave their home by themselves between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're virtually stuck at home. So, you know, this is an opportunity for them to engage with the teacher and also the students online. So we need to, you know, we need to really cater for them as well.
Yeah, and asking some of my students to write something and then reading all about depression, social isolation, like we're more connected than ever and they're still very lonely. So for us, that really means like those virtual Zoom hours to set them up online. Just come in if you want to, have a coffee online. That's just so important for students.
Yes. During lockdown, IH World organised an amazing lockdown fun group for teachers to have online quizzes and things like that. And it was great, really, really good. You know, maybe now during the second wave, it'd be great for them to have another lockdown fun group.
And that's it. I think as well, it's about teachers. We need to stay connected as well, right? Because we can feel quite lonely as well behind our little screen. This is why it's such an amazing event that you've organised, Glenn. Fabulous.
Thank you. Well, anyway, Anna, it's been a pleasure. As always, thank you so very much. Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and good luck with the rest of the, what is it for you, afternoon?
Yeah, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm here till, well, 9:30.
Evening.